Today I'm going to be doing a colored pencil over an airbrush background tutorial using a photo from a royalty-free site that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. Today's video is sponsored by Graphic Stock. With over 300,000 graphics, images, and vectors, it is the largest unlimited download website on the internet. I have purchased individual images before from online sites. For the fox that I used a while back, I believe I paid around $30 for one image. So having unlimited image downloads is a pretty big deal. If you go to graphicstock.com/YouTube or click the link in the video description below, you can get a 7-day free trial. During that trial, you can download up to 140 images. You can also sign up for their annual plan, which is $99 for unlimited access to those 300,000 images for a year. All of their memberships come with a 100% royalty-free agreement, which means you cannot get sued by copyright holders. You can use this for artwork on your paintings. You can also use these images in your blogs. I've had my membership now for 2 months, and I find myself going there first to download things because I know they're royalty-free and I am using them in my blogs. If I need a picture of a cake, I can just go to Graphic Stock. I can grab one of those and use that in the blog. So it's been really convenient. I can honestly say in the last 2 months of using this, I have loved my membership with them. So now let's move on to the tutorial where I will show you how I painted this butterfly. After drawing my image onto my paper, I used masking fluid by Winsor & Newton, that's the yellow that you're seeing on there, to block out the areas that I wanted to be in colored pencil. Then I'm able to go through with my airbrush and create this sort of out of look background. I'm being very loose, very messy. I don't need anything to be perfect for this. I just need everything to be kind of soft and fuzzy so that it does look out of focus. It's really nice because if you're new to airbrush, this is one of the easiest things to do because you don't need it perfect. You just need it to be somewhat soft and messy. I'm going to do this in multiple layers and just build and build and build until I get it to look how I want. Most of these layers are going to look terrible until I get towards the last few. You can see I had used a circle template to create the circles for that background. I want to make sure I use many different sizes there. I do not want them to all be the same. This whole process with the background took me about 2 hours of painting time. Coming back through with my white, I'm using Createx airbrush paint here. After I get the white in there, I can come on top with colors that are translucent on top, which helps to create more of the depth that I'm trying to get here. The nice thing with this is if you have a bad layer, it is no big deal. You're just going to layer on top of it. You're not going to hit a point where it won't take more layers with the airbrush. You can just keep layering and layering until it looks how you want it to. While I am working on watercolor paper, I do have the edges taped down so that if my paper starts to buckle at all, because I do use so much water in with my airbrush paint, it is going to dry back perfectly flat into shape. So it's not something I really have to worry about. I don't ever stretch my watercolor paper. I just tape it down and it'll dry back flat. Once I was done with that, I removed the masking fluid. Now I'm coming on top with my colored pencils. Now, areas where I'm going to put colored pencil over areas that were airbrushed, I'm going to use my more opaque color. So that is going to be my wax-based Luminance pencils. They're going to show up much, much better over the darker airbrushed colors than the translucent Polychromos would. When I need super fine detail and I'm going to be doing a lot of layering, then I really like my Polychromos. On the highlights for the stem that I'm doing here, I need to make sure that I'm following my reference photo. I've got to copy that to see where the lights and darks need to go. This isn't something where you're magically going to know where all your highlights and shadows go. You need to have a decent reference photo to look at for this. Notice that my highlights are not just all on one side and then the shadows all on the other. They kind of come and go. I've got areas that are darker and then light right next to it on the same side. That's because of how the stems are twisting and turning and how some of the stems are casting a shadow on other stems. So that, again, just look at your reference photo. Now I've got to make sure that all of my stems where it meets the blurry out of focus portions of the flowers, I've got to make sure that blends in seamlessly. So I really have to go over that quite a bit. I don't want it to look like the stems were cut out and pasted on top. They have to fade together. So I've got to work on the shadows there to create that seamless transition. On this section of the stems, I'm getting my base of green and then putting the darks in, making sure to leave the areas light that I need the light to be hitting on. Like everywhere else, this is just a layering process, layer after layer. Moving on to the flowers, I'm getting my base layers blocked in first. I'm not worried that they're exact to my reference photo. I just want to create that same texture so that it looks similar enough. You guys may see this reference photo because you can actually go look it up over on Graphic Stock, but most viewers are not going to see that and look at it and go, oh my gosh, your flowers are in the wrong location. As long as it's close, we're okay. I just want to create that texture, make sure I've got highlights and shadows and a lot of contrast between all of that. Until I get everything blocked in, right now the whites are so white that it makes it a little bit harder to judge my values because it is so light. So I want to go through and block in a lot of those flowers, and then I'm going to come back through and adjust my values as needed. But until I get some of that white covered up, it's really hard to tell if I'm too light or too dark on any given area. So I will continuously layer on that. For a lot of these flowers, I'm starting by just dotting in, again, creating texture. I'm not worried that every single dot is in the right place. I just need to make sure that I'm creating that texture. Going to go over all of that with a cream color, and then I will blend that out with my Mona Lisa odorless paint thinner. I let it dry. I've got to make sure that the transition between the airbrushed portions and the colored pencil portions fade together seamlessly, just like with the stem. So I've really got to work over those areas quite a bit. Right now it's very obvious which portions were airbrushed and which portions were colored pencil, just along those edges. So I'm going to continuously work over that until it fades really seamlessly. Next, I am going to be using the touch-up texture and colored pencil titanium white mixed together to paint on my highlights. This is either a number 2 or a number 3 synthetic hog hair liner brush. I'm not pushing very hard. If I want tiny details, I just barely let that mixture touch the paper. If I want a thicker dot, then I'm going to push a bit harder with that paintbrush. Dotting all those highlights on there, which helps to create that glow, that sparkle where the light is shining off the water droplets on the flowers. And this white just gives you that extra punch. A lot of what I'm doing, they're just dots. It looks like it's tons of little detail, but it's mostly just dots. It's actually not that hard. Just keep building and building. I'm adding some of this touch-up texture and titanium white for the stems as well to get some of the highlights and sparkle. So moving on to the butterfly. Make sure when you're doing a close-up like this one is a beautiful macro shot. I can see a lot of detail in the antennas. I do not just want to put straight black lines when I'm this close to it. So you can see how I've got it faded from that orange and brown into the darker browns and blacks. There's a lot of color in that. Onto the butterfly's face. He's really fluffy, so I need to make sure that I've got those lines, just like if I were doing any other animal's fur. I've got to make sure those lines are going in the right direction to create that fluff. And I will come back through with a touch-up texture and titanium white colored pencil mixture to create more of the fluff on the fur there. Just blocking everything in here. Now, this is not a fast process when you're working with colored pencil. The time-lapse videos give you the illusion that it was done very quickly. This took me several days. Don't rush it. Take your time. Work slowly. And I do recommend work one small section at a time. I didn't do all of the flowers and the butterfly at the same time because that would be very overwhelming. I've broken it up into little sections. There is that touch-up texture and titanium white colored pencil mixed together for the details on the fur and antennae, however you pronounce it, I don't know. Building up the little details in the wings, I'm just blocking in my general shapes here. Notice that the lines here, they're not all one color. Some of them are more of that burnt orange, some switch over to grays, and some are even darker grays. Adding these dots here. Now these dots will get blended out to an extent, but they help to build up the texture that I need. So I'm going to go ahead and put them on now, even though I'll be putting color over them later. As you're working, if you're having a hard time figuring out, should I put dots first? Should I put the color first? Always have a scratch piece of paper next to you. Test out what would happen if you did one over the other. But make sure your paper is the same type of paper that you're working on so that your results will be the same. Because you will get totally different results based on which color you put down first and which amount of detail you put down first. I want to make sure that even though this butterfly is white,
And if you look up this type of butterfly, I believe it's a white cabbage butterfly. I could be saying that wrong, but these guys are white. They do not have all of this blue and cream color that I'm getting into his wings. This is reflecting from the flowers around him. So just remember, when you're drawing or painting white animals or anything that's white, it's not going to be white. Your white will be the highlights, but not the actual subject. Look at how many colors are in this white butterfly. Breaking up the little details along that outer ridge of the wing. I'm just using a color with the pencil that is very, very similar to the background that I had airbrushed. You really can't tell the difference between the airbrush and the colored pencil at that point. That's why I love mixing the Createx with my colored pencil, because it looks very much like the same medium when it's all finished. It's very hard to tell what was airbrushed versus what was colored pencil. I am blending that out with the Mona Lisa odorless paint thinner. I'm going to let that dry completely, and then I'm going to start layering more color on top. I've got to make sure that these wings are dark enough so that when I come through with the white will really pop out. But if I don't get them dark enough, I don't create the contrast that I need. So in the end, he won't have the glow that is needed for this. This is a fairly simple piece, but it's dependent on having that glow. If I lose out or miss the glow, then the whole piece just kind of flops. It's very boring. I need to capture the contrast here to get that glow, which is where the strength in this piece lies. So I've got to make sure that my darks are dark enough. Look how much I'm going over that. Those white wings are not white at all. A little bit more detail, coming back again with the touch-up texture mixed with the colored pencil titanium white. Adding a lot of the dots, brightening up some areas that I wasn't getting quite light enough with the colored pencil. If you do not have the touch-up texture and titanium white, you can just leave those areas of your paper very light to start with. I would normally put a lot of luminance white down first. That way I don't go too dark when I'm adding other colors later on. Here I didn't have to worry about that because I knew I had the touch-up texture and colored pencil titanium white to go over later. And again, make sure you get that contrast. Without the contrast in there, if your darks are not dark enough, your lights aren't going to appear light enough. And here, looking at my final piece, you can really see how there's not that much with just the white showing. It's the highlights, but that is what creates the impact of that glow from the wings and even on the flowers. I've got to have everything around it dark enough in order for those lights to be light enough. If you want to paint or draw this specific butterfly, it can be found over at Graphic Stock, and I will have the links below where you can get that free 7-day trial. So if you wanted to download this one and try it out, you can do that.
Thanks for watching. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every Tuesday where I'm critiquing your original paintings or drawings, my own speed paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, art Q&A videos every Thursday, and artist vlogs each Saturday. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+. All of those social media sites are linked below in the video description where you can keep up with news, my newest work, and see real-time clips of whatever it is I'm currently working on. I have not posted a real-time clip in a very long time. I'm going to have to do that this week. There is a gnat flying around my studio that has been driving me crazy since last night, and I can't catch him. So if you see random things flying across the camera screen, it's the gnat. He's been here long enough. I should just name him. His name is now Edward. I wonder if Edward would let me put a leash on him.